Real estate is about the most promising, profitable, and assured space to put your funds in. However, as promising and assured as it is, there are certain seemingly common and simple pitfalls that you must avoid to ensure that you don't have your fingers burnt. Do you plan to buy real estate someday? Do you sell real estate? Do you market real estate? Do you plan to rent or lease a space for residential purpose, commercial purpose, or whatsoever need you may have? Then this video is for you. My name is Precious Ogun Michael. Join me today as we explore the avoidable pitfalls in real estate. The first mistake that a lot of people make is failure to define the goal. Now, people are tempted to just buy anything and everything real estate that is brought to your table simply because you've been told that real estate is the new oil or real estate is the best place to put your funds in. But there are 4 important questions that you must ask. Number 1 is, why do I want to buy this particular property? You must keep the goal in mind. You must define the goal and keep the goal in mind. Do I want to tie down assets? Do I want to put this money into assets so that I don't spend it? Is that a goal? Do I want something that can make money for me, instantly? Is that the goal? There is a need for you to know, what do I really want to achieve? What is the goal of this particular venture that I'm about to put my funds in? Number 2 is, how soon do I need my money? This is what we often call short-term goal and long-term goal. There are certain people who say, I don't need this 50 million naira for now, but I also don't want to use it. Let me put it in a kind of space that I won't touch it for now. There are people who say, I have this 50 million now and I want it to become 100 million in another 3 years. What can I do with these funds? The reason why it's important to ask these questions is that the answer to these questions will determine the choice or the aspect of real estate that you want to put your funds in. A lot of people don't know that we have over 8 or 9 different arms of real estate that you can actually put your funds in and get your profit depending on when and how you need your fund. The third question is your risk level. This particular fund you want to trade with, is it something that if it doesn't come back, you lose it all? Or is it something that, okay, well, this is just my probably profit or my savings and I can take a risk on it? That will also guide the kind of business that you might want to put that fund in. And the fourth question is, how much do I have to start? The fund availability will also help to guide the choice of real estate that you put your foot in. If you have 100 million naira, for example, you can decide to say, okay, I want to start site and service, put in this fund to buy some pieces of land, put in a little development and start to sell, say maybe 1 acre of land, and have a very small private estate. But if you have 100 million naira, you don't say you want to go into housing, because you and I know in Nigeria today, with 100 million naira, you might not even be able to build completely 2 duplexes. So how much do I have to start with? We often advise people to start with what they have. Don't wait till you have a certain amount before you start. But with that little that you have, you can choose the aspect of real estate that you can still play in with that amount of money that you have. With the proper guide of an expert, you can now decide, okay, which aspect of real estate do I want to play in? Another caution to note when buying real estate is inspection. Now, you must know that it is not enough to just see the pictures and the videos of the property or the land that you want to purchase. It's good to go an extra mile and inspect. If you cannot inspect for whatsoever reason, maybe you are not in the country or you cannot make it down to that location at that time, then you should request for a detailed video that not only shows the property but also shows the environment. You want to know who your neighbor is. You want to get a residential apartment, for example, and then there's a church right beside you, or a mosque right beside you, or a commercial bank opposite you. You must pay attention to your security. So you need to know, I want to see the environment. I want to see the road network. I want to see how the road is. I want to know, what surrounds this beautiful house. So inspection is key. And if you can't do inspection, please get a detailed video that can show you not just your apartment, but then your neighborhood. Still on inspection, another thing to pay attention to is security. Please, if you meet somebody online or offline and you want to inspect a place together, ensure that you don't meet on the road, you meet in an office, peg an address and a face to where you are going. Communicate same to your family members and be sure that security wise you are covered. Also, if you are an agency or a company, ensure that you have something called prospect identification form, where you can actually get the details of the person you are taking on an inspection, and if possible, do a photocopy of his ID and affix it to it. It's also important that security is also vice versa for the company, for the agent, and even for the prospect. So security is something to pay close attention to. The third point we'll be considering today is verification. Please permit me to say it 3 times. Verification, verification, verification. It's important, number one, that you don't verify yourself. You need a professional to help you, preferably a lawyer, to help you do your land verification. It is very important. Now, there are things you need to check for. Number one, you need to check for title. There are several title documents that a land can carry, and there are certain, each of these documents have their own implication. It can make or mar the investment you are about to make. Verification is also done on site. A lot of people feel that, oh, this is the survey, this is the C of O. You can actually purchase a land with a survey. They are showing you the survey as the survey of that land, and that survey doesn't even belong to that land. So oftentimes it's important you get a surveyor to go on the site and pick the coordinate number on site. That coordinate number must tally with the coordinate number on the survey before you can actually conclude that that survey plan is the survey for that land that is being checked. Aside survey plan, C of O, and all those checks, it's also important that you check at the land registry for other types of encumbrances. For example, is this land mortgaged? Some people use a property to get a loan in the bank and they still sell it off to you. How valid is that property when you buy it? Is there a land dispute on this property? These are findings that you can actually get that will help to guide if you want to go on with that investment or not. Let me add this. A lot of people will say, I didn't take mortgage with my land, or I just borrowed 5,000 somewhere and I dropped the land document there. You need to know that mere dropping your property documents with any financial institution or a bank creates an equitable mortgage. There is an intent that you intend to borrow money using that property as a collateral. So these are things that you must pay attention to ensure that you don't get your fingers burnt while investing in real estate. Another mistake a lot of people make is thinking, oh, I'm buying a property with a C of O, I'm buying a property with a governor's consent, and because of that, you fail to trace the root of title. It's important to trace root of title in any property you are getting. What do I mean by root of title? If there are 5 people who have owned that property before you, there is a need for you to link every buyer to the person they bought from till you get to the final root. There are so many decided cases in court where a C of O is set aside. Yeah, a C of O can actually be set aside and expunged because it is not resting on a proper root of title. So you must be sure that the person you are buying from, you can establish that he bought from the right person to the first settler, first owner, or the owner that is recognized, by the government as the original owner of that piece of property. So it is important to trace title. Another error that people make, and this one is important to we women. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo is different from Mr. Tunde and Mrs. Tola Adebayo. Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo can be Mrs. anybody. We've seen women who contribute money with their husband, buy a property, and then you put Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo on it. And tomorrow your husband says that you are not fine again, and he brings in another Mrs. Adebayo. That Mrs. Adebayo can lay claim to that property if you don't pay attention to details. So when you are drafting your deed of assignment, your survey plan, your receipt of purchase, it is important that you use full names. Mr. Bayo Adebayo and Mrs. Ronke Adebayo in full. If you are also buying from a Mr. and a Mrs., it is important that you talk to both the Mr. and the Mrs. There are instances where Mr. and Mrs. are fighting and Mr. wants to quickly sell, and you are seeing Mr. face to face. So long as you have Mr. and Mrs. on that document, you must insist to Mr. that I want to meet Mrs. Ronke Adebayo and be sure that she also wants this property to be sold because she's a co-owner. Tomorrow, if you buy, Mrs. Ronke can come aside and set aside that sale in that she did not consent to the sale of that property, and then you start going back and forth the law court. So it is important that this is done. If one of the parties is deceased, if one person is dead, we'll come to that where we'll talk about intestate and testate, where somebody dies with a will or somebody dies without a will. We'll get to that subsequently. Another simple but ignored verification step is checking the neighborhood. Going round, you want to buy a particular plot of land, your lawyer or your manager, a property manager, can actually go to that site and ask questions. Listen, this is Nigeria. We've had so many encumbrances that are not in the land registry or in any file. We expose it by visiting that land. You can actually sit with one mama selling something, selling drinks around there, and ask her, mama, this house, do they want to sell it? You make sure you buy something. That's the trick. So once you've exchanged money with mama will say, ilẹ̀ yẹn, oh, that land, oh, there are 4 brothers, they are fighting on it. In fact, one has killed one's child. You know, you ask yourself, do I really want to get myself involved with this type of land? Some people might tell you that land, that anybody that buys it like this, after 2 years they must resell it because they start losing their money, they start losing their children. These are questions that a lot of people don't ask, and it's very, very important, you know, in making real estate decisions. Visit the neighborhood, ask questions. You can actually know if there are family battles on that land. You can actually know if it's safe, if it's a safe buy. At times you never can tell. That land may not even be up for sale and you are about to be scammed. By, you know, doing your checks in that environment, you can actually expose that and prevent your hands from being burned.
The next point to be considering is when you are purchasing a land belonging to a family. Now let me shock you. If there are 14 members of a family and then 12 of them sign for you or 13 of them sign for you, and the family head and family secretary does not sign for you, your purchase can be set aside if you are buying a family land. So you need to pay close attention to this to ensure that the head of the family, they always have their Olori Ebi and they always have their family secretary. Those two and any others can sign for you. So you can have the family head, the family secretary, and 3 others or 4 others signing. But you must ensure that the family head and the family secretary signs for you. A lot of people make this mistake. They'll just say, this is the firstborn. This, no, please don't fall into that trap. Ensure that you have, and these are the things that your lawyer will also do for you. So ensure that you have the family head and the family secretary signing for you. Another thing you must establish is that in any property purchase transaction, you must understand that the place of purchase receipt is different from the place of deed of assignment. A lot of people think that once we have deed of assignment, we are good to go. You must still get the purchase receipt and still have the deed of assignment. They play 2 different roles, and those 2 agreements mean, those 2 documents rather mean 2 different things. Another pitfall to avoid is when you are buying the land of a deceased person, that is somebody who is late. There are 2 questions you must ask. Number 1, did this person die leaving a will? If that person died leaving a will, it's good. You just need to see a copy of the will and be sure that, okay, this person you are buying from is probably the beneficiary via that will. Ensure that your lawyer does the verifications and then you can close out on it. If you are buying the property of somebody who died intestate, that is somebody who died without a will, then it's a different ball game entirely. Now, you must know that the only document upon which you can buy the property of somebody who died without a will is a letter of administration. A letter of administration, well, it's a lot. I will do a proper video on a letter of administration subsequently. But for now, briefly, let me just explain. When you are buying the property of somebody who died without leaving a will, what you need is a letter of administration. A letter of administration shows it's done by the probate registry, and it shows that this person is the person who has been given this power to administer the properties of this person. If somebody dies and they have money in the bank, they still need that letter of administration to gain access to that fund. Now, that letter of administration has a step-by-step level of who can apply for it. Number 1 is the wife. If there is no wife, then the son. If there's no son, then the daughter. If there's no daughter, then the brother. If there's no brother, then the sister. It's like that. So when a mother, a wife, and say a son apply, for the letter of administration, there are procedures. I'll do a video on that will detail how that is done. Then when you get that letter of administration, you can now administer all the properties of that person, be it funds in the bank, be it lands that the person owns, or properties that the person owns. So if you are buying from someone who has that letter of administration and you check and see that it's valid, then you can proceed with that transaction. Another thing we'll be considering today is power of attorney. Number one, I must tell you, power of attorney is not a title document. Power of attorney is simply a document from the owner of the property empowering a person, an individual, or a company, or a law firm to act on their behalf on a particular property or on all their properties. So now, when you see someone who has a power of attorney and you want to buy from that person, there are certain questions you must answer. There is the general power of attorney, and then there is the specific power of attorney. The general power of attorney gives the agent or individual or company an absolute power to deal with all the properties of that person. The specific one can just say, this particular property in Lekki, I want you to only manage it. I'm not saying collect rent, I'm not saying, so specific one will state limits of what that person can do. Now imagine if you have a power of attorney and you cannot properly read it or interpret it to know that it is just a specific one, and the person wants to sell to you property in Aja, you will know that whatever you do on that specific power of attorney that doesn't cover that specific land that is stated there will be null and void. So that's another question you should ask. Then another thing to note on power of attorney is that there is revocable and irrevocable power of attorney. You want to be sure that that power of attorney on which you are resting is not revoked, or is not revocable, or has not expired. These are questions to ask when dealing with someone that has a power of attorney. Also, before you pay into an account of an agent who has a power of attorney, you want to be sure that that power of attorney gives him a right to collect that money into his account. I have once seen someone manage a property for someone, and the power of attorney states that they can manage, but there is a clause there that states that all payments must be made to the account of the house owner. So you want to be sure that that agent can actually collect funds to his own account. So it's safe to take it a step further by asking, please, can the owner just confirm, maybe via a text message or an email, that I can actually pay to so account. This doesn't apply to power of attorney alone. Even when you are buying property, for example, the title document is reading Mr. Bayo and Mrs. Ronke Adebayo, and you want to pay, they are sending you an account that is carrying Mudashiru Razak to pay into. You must request for a written instruction or an email stating that I can pay into that account, and it will pass as the cost of that property that you are paying for. Very briefly, I'd just like to touch on documentation. You must understand that in any property or real estate transaction, oral agreements are a no-no. A lot of people get so comfortable with the agent, so friendly with the family, and then you begin to, agree on salient ingredients of that transaction orally. If you have a good lawyer, a good solicitor, a good representative, they will dissuade you from doing this. Funny enough, I've seen people play with huge funds and have oral agreements. And Mr. So said this is where the land stops. No, don't do that. Ensure that everything from date of payment to date of delivery of vacant possession, for date of allocation, everything must be documented. If you are going to be paying in installments, ensure that you have a contract of sale that states the amount you have paid and the amount you will pay, when you will pay it, how you will take possession. Everything must be detailed. Another practice that is best practice for me is having a video recording of payment acknowledgements and execution of documents. We've seen instances where people will come and say, oh, my father signed that agreement because you forced him to, or my father was, I once had a client in 2015 who purchased a property from a man around 65 years old, and then 3 or 4 months later the son came and said my father could not have signed that agreement because he has dementia. I'm like, oh, The father actually signed this agreement. Thankfully, there was a video recording where the agreement was read word for word to the father. He was asked, "Sir, do you understand what you have read? Yes. Are you willing to sign? Yes." With such video proof, you are exonerated from any claim of, "Oh, I signed under duress, I didn't know what I was signing, I was forced to sign, or I didn't even sign this at all." Another point we'll be considering is when you are buying a house or a property that has tenants in it. When you're buying a house or a property that has tenants in it, there are certain important things you must do. Number one, you must ensure that you are introduced to those tenants or occupiers as a new owner. Don't fall into the trap of saying, "I don't want my husband to know that I've sold it, I don't want my wife to know." When you pay for a property, you must be introduced as the owner. Let people know that you own that property. Secondly, you must check to ensure that valid notice to quit has been served to all the tenants there. If you don't intend to retain those tenants, you must be sure that valid notice to quit. What do I mean by valid? Some notices are not valid. If a notice to quit is short by 2 or 3 days from 6 months, it is an invalid notice. And if the tenant is wicked, the tenant won't bring it to your notice. After 6 months, the tenant will tell you, "Well, you didn't give me a valid notice." You have to reissue another 6 months notice. So you must ensure that the owner, the current owner, has given a valid notice. If he has not done that, immediately you pay. You make sure that the first thing you do is to get a lawyer to issue a valid notice to quit, so that you can have your properties for your use at the earliest time possible. Another thing to do is to ensure that you check for debts, land use charge, PHCN debts, LOMA debts, whatever debt it is. Make sure you check to ensure that you are not inheriting any avoidable liability. And if you are, have an agreement with the landlord stating that, "Oh, should I remove the money from the cost of the property?" Just ensure that you have all of these things checked. And finally, today, another important step you must take is possession. If you buy any property, an expanse of land, no matter how remote the area is, ensure you take possession. Why? If there is a dispute between party A and party B, the party that is in possession at that time often has an upper hand over the party that is not in possession. How can you take possession? You can decide to clear your land. It shows that there is somebody who owns this land and is taking care of it. Clearing also helps to expose issues. If there is someone else that is counterclaiming on that land, the moment you start clearing, they will come and confront you, and then you can resolve issues. You can take possession by farming on the land. You can take possession by planting trees around the land. You can take possession by doing a fence or a gatehouse. You can take possession by putting in settlers in the land, people who will just go there, leave their farm, carry on activity till you are ready to build. You can also take possession by appointing an agent who will go there regularly to visit the land and inspect the land. There are so many other points to note and cautions to take, but I believe that with this few we have shared today, you would avoid having your finger burnt the next time we are dealing in a real estate transaction.
Once again, my name is Precious Ogun Michael. I hope you had an amazing time. I do hope that you will like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again some other time. Bye.